Desire is not what you think it is. You believe you want what you choose, that your cravings are yours alone. But what if that very sense of choice is an illusion, carefully constructed by forces you don't understand? Jacques Lacan, one of the most enigmatic figures in psychoanalysis, warned us of this hidden trap. He believed that our desires are not born from within, but from something far more elusive, the desire of the other. In other words, we want what we believe others want us to want. Our desires are not independent. They're echoes, reflections bouncing off social mirrors that distort what we think we truly need. From birth, we're caught in a network of language and symbols. Lacan called this the symbolic order. This is where we learn to speak, to act, to want. But in learning how to express ourselves in the world's language, we inherit the world's expectations. We inherit its projections, its values, its wounds. So when you say, "I want success, I want love, I want freedom," whose voice is really speaking? Is it yours? Or is it the voice of a parent, a culture, a God you no longer believe in, but still obey? Desire, according to Lacan, is a structure. It's not a feeling or a passing whim. It's a constant hunger, endlessly moving, never satisfied. And that's the point. Desire feeds on what it lacks. It always wants what it doesn't have. Which means that if you ever did get what you wanted, desire would vanish. That's why you chase endlessly. Not because the object is worthy, but because your desire requires the chase itself. You are trapped, not by failure to reach your goal, but by the nature of your desire to begin with. And yet you call this freedom. Lacan goes deeper. He tells us that desire is structured like a language. Think about that for a moment. A language has rules, signs, substitutions. You don't speak randomly. You speak according to patterns you learned. So does desire. You substitute one object for another. When one relationship fails, you replace the person but keep chasing the same emotional pattern. You swap careers, cities, clothes, but the underlying itch stays untouched. Because the structure of your desire never changed. You think you're evolving, when really, you're just rearranging the same cage. And worse, your desire is never truly about the object. It's about what the object represents. You don't desire the person, the car, the success. You desire what you think they will make you become in the eyes of others. That's what Lacan meant by the desire of the other. You are not really in love with your partner. You're in love with how they reflect you, with how they confirm your identity, your worth, your visibility in the symbolic world. That's why even when you get what you want, it's never enough. Because it never really was about the thing. It was about being seen. But here's the most dangerous part. The more unconscious your desire is, the more power it has over you. You obey without question. You move, work, sacrifice, pursue, without knowing what you're really chasing. Desire keeps you on a leash, and the leash is invisible. You call it passion. You call it purpose. But Lacan would call it misrecognition, a fundamental misunderstanding of who you are and what you want. And unless you become aware of this illusion, you'll continue to be controlled by it, all the while believing you're free. The illusion of freedom in desire is perhaps its cruelest trick. You think you're acting out of choice, but you're merely acting out a script you never wrote. Lacan described this as being caught in the imaginary and the symbolic. In the imaginary, you chase reflections, mirrors of yourself that promise completion. You see the confident version of you in another person. You see the perfect body, the wealthy life, the admired artist. And something inside says, if I had that, I would be whole. But the reflection is always just out of reach. It's seductive, not because it's real, but because it seems like it could be. It keeps you moving in circles, mistaking the image for the truth. Meanwhile, the symbolic traps you in a social matrix. Family, religion, media, school. institutions that define what is acceptable to want. You don't just want things randomly. You want what is allowed, what is admired, what fits the narrative. And yet, something doesn't sit right. There's a discomfort beneath all of this, a subtle sense that something is missing. Lacan calls this the real. It's not what you see or what you're told. It's what escapes representation. The real is what you can't explain, what unsettles you, what slips through language. It's the pain behind the image, the trauma behind the smile. That's why desire always hurts, not because you're doing it wrong, but because it's built on lack. There is no final object that will save you, no ultimate success, relationship, or revelation that will finally make everything okay. Because desire doesn't want to be satisfied. It wants to continue. It survives by keeping you in a loop, always longing, never arriving. And so you work harder, love harder, chase harder, thinking the problem is your effort. But the problem is in the structure itself. This loop becomes your identity. You begin to confuse who you are with what you want. Your sense of self gets tangled in the pursuit. If you're always chasing something, then you're never simply being. You're never still, never grounded. You don't know yourself apart from your hunger. And yet the world praises this hunger. It calls it ambition, drive, hustle. But what if it's just anxiety in disguise? What if your entire life has been a performance of desire, not for yourself, but for the imaginary gaze of others? Lacan warned that this gaze, the eyes you imagine watching you, is more powerful than any real judgment. It shapes your desires even when no one is there. You dress for someone who isn't looking. You succeed for applause that never comes. You perform a version of yourself for an audience that lives only in your mind. And in doing so, you lose the ability to recognize your true self. You become estranged from your needs, your instincts, your intuition. You don't even know what peace would look like, because you've never lived without the pressure of wanting. This is the tragedy of modern identity. We are formed through lack. We define ourselves not by who we are, but by what we don't yet have. Desire becomes our compass, but it's broken, always pointing us away from stillness, from presence, from clarity. Lacan doesn't offer a quick fix. He doesn't tell you how to stop wanting. He tells you to become aware, to see the machinery, because only when you notice the system can you begin to question it. And only when you question it can you begin to break its hold. Awareness doesn't silence desire, but it reveals its shape. And in that revelation, something shifts. You stop being a slave. You stop mistaking the hunger for truth. You begin to see where your thoughts are not your own, where your identity was scripted, where your freedom was an illusion sold through mirrored images and borrowed expectations. This is the first break in the loop. The moment where you stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "Who taught me to want this?" But this moment is terrifying. When the chase loses meaning, what's left? When you unplug from the patterns that defined you, you don't immediately find clarity. You find emptiness, silence, solitude. And that's where the next stage begins. Carl Jung believed that after you deconstruct the illusion of desire, you must face what's underneath. And often, what you find is loneliness. Not just the absence of others, but the absence of distraction, the raw encounter with yourself. And for many, that's even more frightening than being controlled. So ask yourself this: if you stopped chasing everything the world told you to want, what would be left of you? What part of your identity is truly yours? And what part is just a costume you've been wearing for applause that never came? Let me know in the comments. What's one desire you've chased that no longer feels like your own? And why do you think you held on to it for so long? Because in the next video, we'll go deeper, not into desire, but into solitude, and why only through isolation can you finally become whole.